So welcome to moving at, we're moving at high altitudes. This call is for anyone in Foundations 1 and 2. And let's pray. So Father, I thank you for your simplicity of heart towards us, and that you ask us just to have a simplicity of devotion toward you. And so I just pray, Father, that as we ascend today, that you would not find our hearts proud or our eyes haughty, that we would not involve ourselves in great matters or in things that are too difficult for us. Let us have a composed and quieted soul. Let our soul be like a weaned child that rests against his mother. My soul is like a weaned child within me. Let us hope in the Lord today, from this time forth and forevermore. And Father, I just thank you as we start moving forward, whether that's in like preparation, whether it's training and climbing, teamwork, wherever we're at, that we would start from a rested state so that you can speak to us and that you can be our coach. So welcome, guys. We've got Wei, John, and Sharon, and Julie. And so I am actually substituting for Meg, and Meg set up these questions. And like I said, it was like my call. So in the warrior class, there's always something that we can step into, and then with the same stroke we can step out of. So Meg stepped out of something for a while, and then so I'll just step in and try the gear on and see how it works. So so with these coaching calls and in Foundations, the way I was trained from the very beginning, I'm a self-starter, and that's something that I love about the warrior class and with Foundations 1 and 2. It's taking your ability and expanding that ability to be a self-starter. And one of the things on the CD that we use, that Meg uses for these calls, Graham talks about that when you're on the climb, you can't use, so in my words, I can't use somebody else's gear. We were talking a little bit earlier, Sharon, about climbers that I know, that they have their own gear and they know how it works. And I think that's really important in Foundations 1 and 2, is somebody designs the gear at first, but then when you try it on, you can make all sorts of adjustments and so forth. And so just one story, I used to live in the Arctic when my kids were small, and you buy gear for them and for yourself, and then once you're out in the cold, you find out very quickly what works and what doesn't. Yeah, very quickly. And with what I learned from a Native woman with my small children, is that you take a child's coat or their jacket, and you actually sew the hands shut so that their hands can't get out, so that they can't lose their glove, because children don't have that quick ability, and their fine motor skills aren't set yet. And so that's something that in Foundations 1 and 2 that we're actually doing as a child, sometimes in our gear, and learning like fine motor or fine quick and like fine-tuned obedience. In order to protect ourselves, we learn how to design our own gear for where we're at. And I just wanted to share that. So, in the natural, a body cannot move quickly at high altitude. The brain cannot process complex issues. So that's like a metaphor as we're climbing spiritually and learning how to listen and be teachable, but then take what our teacher has taught us and then create our own gear, so to speak, so that we can climb well. How has this, in your training with Warrior Class, how have you applied this? Is it true? Have you not been able to move quickly? Have you been able to process complex issues? And its application.
Whoa.
So I think it's been definitely a learning process, and really been about just, for me, it's been absorbing what Graham said, and I've really just been taking that time to just absorb that and to really just mull it over and apply it to where I am.
John, I agree that so much of what is required, you get the new thing and you've got to figure out, how does this fit me and how does it work with my brain? And I always love coming back to living in a higher place because it applies. Because in the Warrior Class, I've been moving a little fast, and I always feel like I'm on the next new clock. And even today, as I'm reading, because we have on the website, you can get the transcript. And I actually, my learning style, I do better with the written word than just listening. I actually like being able to see it and read it. So, and even just starting with that and what Graham says about being in a new place. And that very first section, he talks about how God meets you in your failure and comes in and helps you learn the new thing. And makes the new covenant, updates your relationship, and brings you forward. So it's the relevance of taking whatever in your training is there and applying it to your life and partnering with God with how he wants to upgrade you there. And so being able to start with living at a high place and learn that tool, learn to work with the tool of the mindset that when you step into a new thing, you're in a high place. I guess what I'm trying to say is that's just been a blessing to me to have that tool in my own personal process. So I don't know how much sense that made, but
No, I completely understand what you're saying. I was trying to take it also as well as look at it in, as he was discussing the wounding, you don't want to step into higher places until really you've taken care of a lot of the wounds that you might have and make sure that you're healed of those wounds. And so I've been trying to take a little bit of time as well to really take a look and see, do I have any woundings? Do I have any scars that are maybe unhealed? And really take some time and not rush into it just to finish. And really take some time to evaluate, kind of the base camp as to where I am and where I'm starting from.
So what do you think, what is Graham talking about when we can't, not to process complex things, or that, obviously he's making this metaphor about the climb and what happens in your blood and oxygen levels. But what does that mean as we, since you brought up healing, what does that mean to to us, like say at a base camp, like say you climb, you know, you've been climbing, and then you're at base camp, and that first climb is kind of an assessment of where you are. I think that's like, what if your healing process like is a complex thing? Or maybe it's a little more complex than you thought it was.
Yeah, that's a good question. Are you indicating that maybe part of the climb is part of the healing process?
So, I think, yeah, I think initially, like for an athlete, if you're getting back into a race after you've been through a long testing period, you can go out for like a long run or a long stride and assess like, do I have any weak points in my joints or my feet or my knees, and how am I going to shore those up? So, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that that's probably what you do while you're at base camp. This is me just taking the information that I've learned from Graham here. Is that would be something that you would do while you're at base camp, is to test those types of things out, and maybe take a day trip or But I think where it seemed like he was going is before you make that next stride up to the next level, you take the time to make sure that your foundation is secure. Like you said, make sure your joints and everything are good, and make sure that your muscles are prepared, that your blood and everything is prepared, which comes from kind of what we might call a wilderness training. Spending some time in that wilderness, really spending time with him, and creating that foundation for the next move.
Yeah, yeah. Like I know.
Yeah. I'm a runner. I'm not a climber. I'm a runner, but I do things like if you have an injury. I've had plantar fasciitis before, and that's a painful process to recover from, and it's definitely something you don't want to go out and do a long run until you've tested it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think, Julie, I think the simplicity piece comes in as well. Because you were talking about, you asked about the whole, you don't want to think about complex issues. And so for someone on a climb, if you're going up and you realize the issue is more complex, it's not just going to be stretching to solve the problem. You've got a real issue. You might have to go back down to base camp. So in warrior class training, it's perfectly okay to start something and go, oh, wait, I've got to back up and settle and let this thing settle out, or I've got to process something. I can't process X while I'm doing climb Y, it's not going to work. And, but I love the simplicity in the training in general, even as Graham talks about getting ready for the climb and you have your supplies and you listen to the Sherpa, the whole having the Sherpa there to help you know what you need and what you're supposed to do. And sometimes I think we make things too complicated for ourselves. And if we go back to the Lord and we ask the Holy Spirit, he's really good at simplifying stuff. At least he is for me. Oftentimes I make things way bigger than they are, and he'll just calm me down and say, oh no, it's just this. It's just this. And so I do like the simplicity of the climb. And then it's fascinating, you get up to the next base camp and you're like, oh wow, you realize the complexity that God handled, that at least for me, that I didn't have to. I'm very appreciative of that.
Well, I think too, like in Foundations 1, it's like the initial climb. It's like, you've been through training and through like the reading of the materials. Let me break it down into warrior class stuff. So you read through the materials and you decide kind of like which branch or which stream that you're going to start working with, because there are many places, and that can be kind of overwhelming. Like to get it all at once. And I know at that point I'm like, just give me one thing to focus on and to work with in the very beginning. And then making that initial climb. And it's like climbing up to a high area. Of course, we've got Everest on the screen, which gives you a view, but I thought there are also climbs that we train for that take us up to a plateau area, that we climb up from the valley up to a large, broad plateau area, where you can do, like here in Virginia where I'm at, it's flat. It's so flat. And you can see it has its own, anyway, there's no peaks or anything. And once you do that initial climb, then you can assess, okay, like with healing, I think that's really beneficial. Like, I forget what it was called in the beginning, what we called it, but in Foundations 1, just thinking of that as the initial climb and doing the assessment of how fit am I, do I have any injuries, soft joints that I want to look to, and so forth. But anyway, I don't know how much to share here, but Psalm of Ascents is what's used in this, like as an umbrella, and being in places when there's a lot of spiritual growth, that Father is, he's like sets the stage for, the atmosphere for, and at those times, it wasn't a time for me to be reading through. I wasn't doing like the 1 year application, like reading through the Word in 1 year at all. I would nestle down into the Psalms, or into the Gospels, and you have to keep it really simple. Anyway, for distractions, but how can be, in terms of like, so I'm putting this picture out here for us to look at and seeing the different camps that are out there, and how can using yourself, planning for yourself or looking at the training, you can begin to break your journey down, or the way you tackle the material, the training calls, and the flow of where your class works for you into small steps.
Well, I think it's definitely that there's a ton of information, a ton of material.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it's going to be a combination of, how much I can absorb and, at the same time, spend the time that I really need to do, combined with, what I'm doing on a day-to-day, work basis. But that's one of the real things that I'm really looking forward to about a virtual community, is that it can be done anywhere. There's a lot of times I can't be involved in local groups just because of travel schedules. I can't commit to being in a Tuesday morning group because half the time I'm out of the city, out of the state. And so, but frequently, I'm in a hotel in the evening with access to Wi-Fi, and I can join in. I'm sitting on airplanes, and, I have time to really maybe spend some time doing some of the work, doing some of the readings, and really, spending some time in the Word. And it just really gives an opportunity to self-pace. And I think that it's going to be hard to tell exactly, how quickly I can do things, and what pace to set. But I think that it'll be there. And I think that I'll be able to manage it pretty well. And not only that, I think that there's probably, if you do it correctly, there's a good support group within the community to help you along. That's kind of one of the things I'm learning, is the coaches are there for your help.
I know I got stuck between 1 and 2. I felt like, I really didn't get 1. It's like, did I really get what I needed to get? And then I know the coach that I had at the time, just start 2. Just start it and finish it. because a lot of time, like instead of like on that plateau, which is fine because we can climb to an area that's higher, but not to get stuck in those plateaus. I know. So what, Sharon, like, has there ever been a time where you, like with baby steps, where you backed up, where you got into a training or took on more responsibility in the word class, where you're like, okay, I need to break this down into smaller parts?
Well, when I did level 1, when I started with, let me think just a minute, the actual name of the training. Living Your Truest Identity. Because Living Your Truest Identity actually had questions to answer. And I felt like I knew how to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I started. Even though in the listing, you know, when you get all the materials, it wasn't the first thing. But that was the thing I felt like I knew how to do, so that's where I started.
Yeah.
Then I went, the whole listening to a soaking CD was like learning a foreign language to me. It was much more complicated, but I could fit that in between doing other things in my training. So I had to look at the whole thing of level 1 and break it into pieces as to how it fit me. And then when I got to the end of it, I realized I hadn't been very organized when I did my work, and I had to try to find all the pieces and put them all together. But that in and of itself I was learning grace. And at the time I didn't understand what the grace I was learning, because that was before I became a coach. And then I became a coach, and there were many days when the Lord took me back. Remember at the end of level 1 when everything felt disorganized and we got it all put together? Well, let's do that again. He's always been so kind with me, and how he knows my brain works, and just really embracing who I am and how I'm wired. And there's no right, there's no perfect right way to do the warrior class, that each person's unique and each person's going to have to find their own groove. Kind of like what you were saying, Julie, about when you go on a climb and you've got your gear, you've got to make the gear fit for you. And so you know how to work with it comfortably. If there's something you're supposed to hold to help you climb, or there's some place you're supposed to put a carabiner, you're going to have to figure it out so it works best for you. And it's not confusing. So, and I just feel very blessed that how warrior class is wired, I had space to do that. Because everybody's unique.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can really speak to the disorganization. Like with level 1, I kind of was organized, but level 2, I'll write anyway. It's sort of answer questions with a free flow after, I don't know, whatever, reading or listening to the CD or the teaching, and then sort of free flow write. And so I have a master copy that's a free flow for me, and then I go back and edit it, and I botched all that. Just like which one's the free flow and which one's the one that, you don't want to know everything I'm thinking. That kind of thing, So it was like, oh, yeah. So, and I think, like, in terms of, that's a perfect example of breaking something down for someone who's in Foundations 1 and 2, is organization skills. And in terms of hearing the Lord and which way is the wind blowing, and okay, I want you to go into this direction, I want you to pay more attention to this area and these questions and these resources, rather than someone's over in, like say on this side, and learning how to organize when then hearing his voice in the dynamic of being trained. The other thing, like, I think, like John and Sharon, like how individual, like allowing the Holy Spirit to step in and mentor you. Like, that's an arena, like, where, like, if someone comes to me and asks me a question in terms of coaching, it's like, well, you know, what's the Holy Spirit saying to you? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be standing with that person, or they can't text me. I don't want to be there. It's got to be them and the Holy Spirit, you know, the Word with them. And when you're on when you're in a tight spot, when you get into a kind of a tight spot, it's you and him really on a climb, even though you're working with a team. And anyway, like, but you know, with foundations, anyone who might listen that will pick this call up and listen to it. Organizational skills are like a baby step area.
Yes.
Yeah, and make the choice. Yeah, leaning into Holy Spirit. What do you want me to focus on? What do you want me to lean into with these? And then choosing it. And another baby step area that's a possibility. Actually, it is a possibility for all of us, but it's yes and no, like a Y and an N. You know, whenever you say a yes, that's kind of a, you know, and a no. And in a climb or any time, like, so living in the Arctic, you have to pay attention to the wind. You have to pay attention to, I guess, like in a Christian way, you would pay attention to the atmosphere. But there you have to pay attention to how am I feeling today? You know, what are my emotions today? Should I go out and walk today? What's the wind speed? You know, what's the temperature and all that? Like, there are variables that come up in our training, and it's really paying attention with that. I know, and since it's a small call, I'll feel free to share a little bit more. But so in training and living in the Arctic, especially with small children, Neil and I would trade out. Like, when he'd come home from work, I would get outside, and that's really kind of like the secret to living in an extreme place, is that you're not inside all the time. You have to get outside, right? Like, even in Texas, you get out for a run, right? We can't be inside all the time. And I just barreled outside, and I had forgotten some of my gear for my neck. And I knew at that point that the lagoon was frozen by then, so I could walk across it. Like,
oh wow.
But what I did not know is that preceding day there had been a windstorm that had made snow dunes. So as I was walking across, I hit these snow dunes and got lost. I was walking to the post office. It sounds like, you know, it's just down the street, but when it's cold out, and then it started to snow, and I got caught in a whiteout with snow dunes and got lost. Just going to drop off my mail, right? That was like it's a simple task, a very simple task, but I hadn't taken, you know, I hadn't hit my list. And I think some of these things seem like simple tasks, but just encouraging people on Foundations 1 and 2, when you're intending to go to a higher place with the Lord, to really pay attention to the atmospheres that you're in, to the groups you're in, conversations you're in. You know, like, so for me, it's like being in certain groups, it's like being in a whiteout, like, I'm lost here, like, and that could be a baby step to remember to take those baby steps. And then even in learning how to coach, right? Or it's the same skills and the same tasks that we do to prepare Um, we do them all over again. It's the skill and the task. Like, do I have my gaiters on? Do I, have I checked, what has it been like? Is the topography the same? And eventually what got me out of it was my previous training of just experiences, snow machining or sledding or whatever, or being outside is what got me out of it. I got quiet and still, and I stopped moving, right? So even though I was moving in a simple task, I had to stop and not panic. And then I remembered that the post office has a really bright light over it. And so I climbed up a dune and looked over and looked for the light. It's kind of cliche, and then I found the light. And I went toward the light.
Oh, but I love it. That's awesome.
That's great.
I'm up and over, and sorry, but it's very simple things, like not panicking. Anyway, and though that was actually training for some of the things that I've experienced in the church, just in my experience, just things that happen. It's like, I'm really lost here, Lord.
Yeah.
Getting really still and finding where to climb, not panicking, not even turning back, right? Because I knew my house, my house didn't have that marker on it. I knew what my house looked like from behind, but I knew where I was going had a bright light on it. And I kind of learned the hard way. And then I was out for a period of time, and but then once I got to the post office, right? Because I know the post office, I knew the building, and dropped my mail. I stayed at the post office for a while until I got calm again. Yeah, and then actually then at that point the whiteout passed. So these skills of being still, not panicking, even when you can't find your bearings, for 1 and 2, because the Lord does come, like He does when we choose training. He comes and settles on us, and He begins to teach us to read our compass, right? Our inner compass. Simple things. I mean, I do have like a list here, a little list. Like, it's really important when you're climbing, like clearing the deck, right? Keep a clear deck on a boat, fishing boat or ship even. Keep the deck clear so you don't trip. And that's yeses and nos. I can do this. Like, you can't do Tuesdays, right, John? So Tuesday mornings, it's like you're clearing the deck. That's a no, but you can say yes over here. I think, anyway, cleaning out your backpack, that's an organizational thing, huh? Before you go up maybe into a new, in the different sections, how the training has a section. So you shift into a new section, you might want to clean out, like, your backpack, so to speak, so you're not carrying a lot of extra extraneous stuff with us. So love, Graham says this, that love is the sole reason. He says this, love is the sole reason to take territory. What insights does this bring to your current area of upgrade? So I'll just say it again. So love is the sole reason to take territory. What insights does this bring to your current area of upgrade?
Good question.
Oh.
And your gut response is usually your best response. And,
Yeah.
and I think in this particular case, it's really, my love and my desire for a deeper relationship with the Lord, and
Yeah.
strengthening that relationship with the Holy Spirit that comes with knowing who you are, your identity in Christ. And that's, I have a real passion for getting that relationship, for knowing better who I am in Christ, and how I can then get better into the puzzle of
You kind of broke up at the end there, but that's for me of the audio.
Yeah.
But you said a deeper relationship. That's what I caught.
Yeah. So I'm looking for more of a deeper relationship with the Lord, and a deeper relationship with the Holy Spirit, and knowing who my identity is in Christ, and how that puzzle piece fits into the kingdom.
Mm.
That's really the love that I have, the passion that I have going forward. It's the love for God and the love for Christ and my relationship in that.
Like that reminds me of, Paul's really like his expression of his heart, that I might know him. Know him in his sufferings and in the power of his resurrection, that he presses on to know him. And one of the things I thought about, love just really makes things simple. Something that I'm meditating on, thinking about, that becoming love, this character, God is love, right? First John says that God is love. And God is a completely whole. He's a whole person. He has complete integrity. He even came up with the concept of integrity, right? And if he is love, then this journey to take territory, to go up, and I'll be transparent here, since it's a small call, like going up into coaching, it's like, it's all for love. It's for love, that someone knows, someone that would hear, like, in their Foundations 1, like, he's patient with you. He's kind toward you. He's not a harsh taskmaster. He's not expecting you to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. The expectation is coming up into love. But that in terms of character, so that changes the compass for me, actually. It's not like keeping track of all my receipts and, make sure I keep up with, my good close friends. Like, no, it's that we would know this love, his patience towards us, his kindness, that he isn't holding any record of wrong against us. He isn't reminding us of our past, whether our past be good or bad. Like, that's not love.
I think when you go back to your question, the more I keep thinking about it, I keep thinking of, well, what is love? How do we define love? And I think how you define love can influence how you would answer that question, and whether that's a earthly love or whether that's a heavenly love. There's obviously all the different types of agape, the different types of love. But I think there's the way I think about it, and the way I guess my gut was, in the way I was answering it, it was more of the longing for relationship, the longing for intimacy. That's the way I kind of think about it. And so when you think about, I believe, what you said, Graham, and your quote from Graham, I don't think it was part of this lesson, but that when you take new territory, it's out of love. I think it is in that intimacy love, that longing for relationship, that longing for being together in intimacy. And so I guess I'm just processing through it in my mind.
Right.
That's what I'm kind of looking for, is to go deeper into that, to have that longing for a more intimacy, that praying without ceasing mindset.
I agree, John. When I read the question and I thought about the question, made me think, I just feel honored that Papa wanted me to go on a trip with him.
Yeah.
So there's territory to take, and I get to go with Papa, and we're doing it together. And that by the time we get to the end of this section or this segment of the journey, I'm going to know him better, and I'm going to feel like he knows me better. I mean, he knows me wonderful, but but it's the me feeling known, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so in doing the journey together, to me, is what it's all about. And that's the whole reason to step into something new, because every time you step into the next segment of training or the next place of serving or whatever that is, it's just another journey with Papa.
Yeah.
And you get to be better friends and really know, because in this journey, we love because he first loved us. So one of my beginning places was, daughter, you don't let me love you, so you don't have what you need to give back. And just the journey of receiving and being able to say, I don't know how to do this. I need help with this. Or I don't understand. Who should I ask for help? And being willing to partner with him in this place to develop trust, so that instead of just knowing in my head he's always with me, I feel it.
Yeah.
Because when you feel it, you just respond. You don't have to think about it. And to get to kind of what you were saying, John, the pray without ceasing, and just being in that place where you're normal, is he knows me and I can trust that, instead of having to think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think in with Foundations 1 and 2, each place sort of it breaks us out of passivity, and helps us lean in and press on because of the structure of it, right, and how it functions.
Right.
But then when it's I like the word, when it's enmeshed with the Holy Spirit, it's like it comes to life. There it goes. There's another dynamic quality to the training that is happening. And people who choose the training can experience that in him. The other thing, like the way our community is structured, is that we can't lean on one another real closely. Like we have to choose to lean into his mentorship, and that's one of the things about maybe 2 years into warrior class, and that in itself is like a we talked about like a value, that we're turning to him first, and really stoking and getting some really good questions. Like I know Christine's really good at questions, and asking him more questions. Like when we get caught in a whiteout and and feel lost because the topography's changed a little bit, or things on the surface have shifted, right? Getting real still and there is some hardship involved in it, you know. Maybe, anyway, just looking for the light. Go for the light. Is there anything else? I know this might be it's about almost 4 o'clock, but are there any other questions? Like Sharon, do you have any questions that you were thinking about, or John? Or anything?
No.
Yeah.
It's such a, I'm still absorbing it all, trying to figure out my way, you know, working around Facebook and everything, and you know, just, I guess, still figuring it all out, and trying to absorb everything that's here, and trying to figure out how to plug in and how to be a part.
Yeah. 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 And figuring out how to plug in and knowing, I really, like, in terms of my experience, like I stepped into, say, Champions team for a while, and then I wanted to really stick with it, but I knew, like, you know, just having a chat with Dad, it's like, this isn't something for you right now. And I didn't understand that, but it's like when you're at a high altitude and you're working with a team, I knew that by not going forward, say with Champions or whatever it is, whatever training that's available, it's like it's really honoring that team so that team can climb. Because the brilliant thing about this, our group, this grouping, is that I know the team will climb and they will share what they see. So if you know, like, that was a time for me to come back down, because I was, you know, I had ascended so far, and then just in my specific training in my local area, you could say, I needed to come back down to the valley. And with Father, and that was really important. But I know, but the sharing, see, whoever climbs and they look and then they share with us, and then that's a marker too. It's like, okay, so I stayed at camp, and there Joshua and Caleb, and hearing their report of what they saw, it's like, okay, I'm going to go with these guys. I'm not going to go with the other 10. I'm going to go with these guys that said, okay, this is what we saw. And yeah, especially when you can't see, when you feel like you're in a whiteout, and we walk by faith and not by sight.
Well, John.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you that you jumped on a call, because I just saw your name on Facebook this last week. So that was very courageous of you. You get some kudos for that.
I tend to be one who just jumps right in.
Oh, good.
I think what I'm going to have to work on, though, is I tend to be the one that's like, okay, I'm going to get this done, and I'm going to move fast, and I'm going to get this, you know, I'm going to just progress through this. But I think so much of what's to be learned is in the process, not in the completion.
Yes. So I understand your heart. And I've said this before, I got through Becoming the Beloved, and I had the questions answered, and they were good Christian answers, and God did a lot for me in that. And I finished level 1, and he sent me back to listen to it again, because there was more that I needed. But because my focus was get it done, because that was the thing that I really didn't know how to do, he needed to send me back around the mountain again, which was such a blessing. And I was very blessed that he took the time to help me do that. But so I understand what you're saying, John. It's like, yeah, we're going to push through. And the Lord's like, no. So, Julie, I love your story. And just about, sometimes you have to be still, and you have to be quiet, and you have to redirect, and you have to figure out where the light is. Because
Yeah.
you could have just kept going. I'm going to get this done, and ended up in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's not good. Like yeah.
so you, John, you're just still in stage 1. So, and when you get to stage 2, you will have more practice in being still and listening. And actually, that's why we revamped how we do our new member process. So you get some more practice in that in stage 2. It is a good thing. So
Good.
Yeah. It is.
So we've been working on as we've revamped some of the training to help people with those very things. So you can develop that skill even more.
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
We've got Andrew. Andrew's coming on here. Hey, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you? Welcome.
I'm fine, thank you.
So, Andrew, just to catch up, we've gone through the questions so far that were out on the call information, and we've been sharing about baby steps and strategies for those things. Did you have time to prep for the call? Did you want to share? I know it's like you're coming on right away, and
Yes, I've had a look at the questions. I love mountains. I've climbed mountains for the last 50 years. So
Oh, wow.
in the natural, when I say mountains, not sort of base camp or anything, but a few thousand feet. And
Okay.
I just love the challenge of that.
Oh,
Say
yeah.
a bit more about it if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, so-
When I was thinking about it, I thought there's two things that occurred to me. First of all, there was the initial resolution. You know, unless something physically stops me, I'm going to get to the top of this mountain. And virtually every mountain I've climbed, I've got to the top. The only times I've failed is when I've been beaten back by weather. But the other thing that occurred to me is you don't just go and climb a mountain. There's months, if not years, that go into getting you physically ready for that. And I think there's a parallel in the spiritual too, that much of where I've got to now, I can see the Lord's been preparing me for mountain climbing. And I think, as somebody said, adding muscle. And you can't just decide to do it. You've got to get yourself into a position where you can actually climb the mountain, be fit enough to do it. Those are the two big lessons I've learned from that.
Mm-hmm. So where are you in your training? Have you completed one, or you're in 2?
Well, I need to ask Christine in a couple of weeks' time when we have the Foundations 1 call.
Okay.
But I think I've finished Foundations on stage 1, but I just want to check that with her.
Mm-hmm.
I've been member of TWC for about 5 or 6 weeks now.
Okay.
I think I'm probably going on to stage 2 next.
Okay. So how long, like, in terms of preparing to climb, what kind of, like, what's that like for you? Like, and I'm specifically talking about your, climbing in the natural, in terms of preparation.
Well, there's general fitness, so you do a lot of walking.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's specific training for the mountain, which includes, in one case, I live in a fairly flat part of England, so we actually had to travel 100 miles to find the nearest mountains, which were in Wales. And we had my wife and I had several days walking in the mountains, not so high, just to sort of get ourselves conditioned for that. And that's basically how we train. We keep up a general level of fitness, and then specifically we set ourselves targets beforehand to make sure that we, are ready for the challenge. You can see parallels in that.
So have you like portioned off, or I think what was it, breaking up your journey, your training in warrior class? How have you broken up your training like you do in the natural? General fitness, and then spending time before the climb. Like, how are you breaking up your actual warrior class training like that?
All I've done so far, I've made notes on the talks I've listened to. I've crafted prayers. I've noted down things I felt the Lord saying to me. In terms of, I think, upgrading, I think I need to be more precise, more diligent about actually using a journal. The other area I've got to upgrade on is digging deeper and asking questions. But I've got a journal which is filling up quite quickly at the moment, and I'll probably have to do what many other people do and split it into more than one journal. But I do need to sit down, for example, and pull all the threads of my identity statement together and make it a more concise, clear statement. So it's work in progress at the moment.
Yeah, we had actually discussed that in terms of organization. I know I was just talking about one of the levels I had botched. Just when I turned it in, it was all up. Anyway, the organization wasn't there. And that in Foundations 1 and 2, that there's a, like you were talking about writing, and then maybe you have a journal that you just write in, and a journal, a question. You have one journal that just has a big question mark on it. You write your questions in it. Find a way that it works for you.
Yeah, I'm still working on that.
Okay.
Find what works for me best.
Yeah.
This is my fancy journal. It is a spiral notebook.
Yeah.
From Walmart.
Oh, yeah.
And I have several. And then I write on the front what they are. And because I had these really pretty journals that I used to write in, and I'd write conversations with God, and they were really pretty. And when the Lord changed how I did some things. So I still have one of those. I have this really nice, what I call a girly journal, that you write pretty stuff in. And then I have I've developed some functional journals to help me keep things straight. Because as a coach, I have a journal that's got coaching stuff in it, and I have a journal that's got training stuff in it, and then I've got another journal that's got identity stuff in it. Because when the identity stuff starts to come out, I put it in a separate place so I don't lose it. Because sometimes by just having one journal and keeping everything in one journal, the Lord would give me something and then I couldn't go find it.
How quickly did you develop that? How quickly did you develop
it took me a year and a half. When I joined, we did not have a new member process. You went through the application process and they threw you in the lake.
Yeah.
Which was what I needed. The Lord knew exactly what I needed. But we've tried to design some tools to help you in the development of, we have tools to develop tools for yourself. Kind of like when Julie was talking about, when you have little kids, you had to sew the sleeves of their jacket shut so they didn't lose their gloves. But you have to do it, right? You have to do it to realize, oh gosh, this needs to be different. So this stages 1 and 2 is very much about just being able to explore and how does this work for me? How does this work for me? How do I make it fit my personality, my time schedule, and all those things? So I hope you guys have fun with that. And it won't take you a year and a half.
That's good.
Yeah, I know for me, I had troubles remembering what calls I was on, or if I had made a call, or, you know, I just kind of like, you know, John, you just show up, you get on a call, you see a call, and you show up, and it's like, I don't know, was I on that call? So I just created like one book. This is my call book, you know, like if I'm on a call, I write notes in it. It's just like for calls.
Yep.
It depends. I know I was recently writing a unit for poetry and for teaching anyway. And one of the resources that I was using talked about like your journal, and they give some of the best advice that I'm going to pass on to students. And that's have a journal, and this is just my recommendation, that you have a journal. My journals stay at home now. They all are on the shelf, and they stay at home. And then when you go out exploring, whatever that is, have a journal that goes with you out, the same journal. And anyway, I've been pretty unorganized that way, and have lost a few things. But, you know, it all works out in the end. It all works together for good, right? I encourage people, and it's interesting, so in writing poetry, a scholastic author that writes for students out in public schools was saying, keep your journals at home. So, and then have one journal or pieces of paper, a system that you use when you go out. Yeah, I'd like to throw that out there for initial climbers, because anyway.
Oh yeah, I've been to a conference before and taken a journal, and then you lose it at the conference, and then everything's gone. That's just that's definitely a point of learning in your life. Okay, thank you, God. I know you've got a good redemption here. Help me see it. So, and he did. He worked it out, because I ended up having conversations with people that I wouldn't have necessarily had to regroup some of the things that I learned at the conference. But anyway, that's a long thing. Right.
It's interesting, and even Andrew, like, there are no failures here.
No failures.
John, like for me, I really felt when I like plateaued and didn't move on from where I was at, kind of like between level 1, level 2, finishing up that, I felt like, how am I going to get this? I really, you know, like, anyway, my inner dialogue and all that. And now, looking back and some of the decisions I made, it's all, he knows your whole training sections ahead, and then what they're for eventually. And, you know, when you're in a relationship with a father, you're always his son. It's not, oh, well, now you're benched, you're not in the game, go sit on the bench, you know. We are his sons. He takes us with him, and it's not like there's no junior varsity or B team in the kingdom. It's like, well, that's the B team. No, it's where we need to be, and there's no failures at all in this. Which, yeah, there really isn't. So, I'm curious, Andrew, since you're here and you came on and you climb, what's been your favorite climb, and why, and what can you apply to your warrior class training? Because there's a lot of material there for you, Andrew.
Yeah.
There's a lot of material.
I think my favourite climb was the highest mountain in Britain, which is called Ben Nevis in Scotland. I did that. One of my first big climbs. It was nearly 50 years ago, and
Oh, wow.
being able to climb the highest mountain from sea level in Britain was just wonderful. And I mean, it's not high by global standards. It's only 4,000 feet from sea level, but you know, you're up there, and on a clear day, you can get such a view from up there. And to me, the thing I enjoy most is that it's the same as getting up high in the spirit, away from the ground, and you just get a different perspective on everything that's going around. You can see things as Father sees them. You see them from God's perspective, rather than down on ground level where you can't really see anything that's going on. And that's one of the great things about being up high. And that's been one of the things that has meant a lot to me recently, is applying that in the spirit, and learning to go up high in the spirit, and rather than get bogged down in something that's going on at ground level, just look down on it from Father's viewpoint, and say, well, it looks different up here. It's I can see how God sees it, and I'm lifted up to that, above the problem. I can see God at work in it. That's really great for me at the moment. That's something I'm doing quite a lot of at the moment.
So on the climbs where you had to descend because of weather, how did you deal with the disappointment of not being able to make summit? Because we do experience disappointment when we can't make summit on our climbs. And in the natural, how did you deal and process or debrief from those specific climbs?
Well, you know the reason for the not being able to make it, and I think obviously there's disappointment, but you then have a think about it, wait for a better weather window, and then go up again. You don't give up. You wait for the right opportunity to do it. And there's a particular mountain in Wales that I've attempted 4 times and only made it twice. But
Oh, wow.
it's not the 2 times I failed that matters. It's the 2 times I got to the top that were important. So you take a long-term view of it and say, well, okay, it didn't work this time, but we'll have another go.
So like those climbs that you didn't make the summit on, they weren't failures at all. It was just...
No, they weren't.
Yeah,
No.
They're not, are they?
They were just delays.
Just delays.
You know, and you were determined to try them again another time.
Yeah.
I don't think I felt at all sort of that I failed or anything. It was just you know, delayed success. How about that?
Yeah.
And you learn, you know, you learn to look out for the right time to do it. You know, when the weather's better. But I've not failed a climb simply because I haven't been prepared for it. I think that's the important thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I know in terms of Sherpas, and in my experience with weather and living in an area where the natives knew the topography and the weather really well, is people who are climbers, people who have movements, or this call is really about movement. They know when the elements aren't right for it, when the wind's not right.
Yeah.
And because I can remember we went up for a visit. We were out at the Beaufort Sea up towards the Arctic, and I just had this bee in my bonnet about doing a polar bear plunge. You know? It was summertime, but it's still winter weather, and I thought, oh, I really want to do that. And we were walking around, and anyway, we were with a group, and there was a native gentleman in the group, and he's like, this isn't a good time to do that. And so I listened to him. You know, it's like, okay, you know, you don't barrel ahead. I think like with the Psalm of Ascents, I really love the Psalm 131. My eyes aren't haughty. Like, I'm going to do this thing. We're going to climb. We're going to finish these assignments. I'm going to get this thing done. You know, like we can have that kind of like, I'm going to rock this. And then you need to listen to somebody who knows the area. And it's like that, you know, the elements aren't, the weather's not good for that. And listen and yield, because that's wise. I really appreciate that, Andrew. The way that you're articulating that it's just a delay, and that the attitude that you have, and like that you'll have clarity in your training through the different assignments and what happens in your life, that looking for the right time, looking for windows of opportunity when the weather clears. And we,
great.
You know, that's a nugget of gold right there. And that's like these calls, Andrew. When we get on calls like this, we can come away. That's why I have a call book, and it's like, you know, there's gold in here, and it comes from everybody else who shares, and and sharing what we have. We share. You share something that, you know, that's something that someone may need, or that we remember. People who are moving, and people who are moving in training and just in intimacy with the Lord, looking for windows. A time like, John, I know you were talking about going deeper in terms of intimacy. I just really encourage you to be sensitive to your windows. I know sometimes when I wake up, that's a window. Like the Lord's very close there, and He'll whisper something to me, and the window's open. And some mornings I can grab it. Some, you know, it's like, and but your windows may be different. It could be when you get, you know, you finally get a seat on your flight and you sit down and pretend to be asleep, right? So you don't have to talk to anybody. And you're watching. Anyway, that could be a window. I don't know, like looking for windows of time when He's whispering what we need on the journey. Andrew, I'm going to ask you one more question. So there was ever a time when you're on a climb where you had to take smaller steps in order to make the ascent? In terms, especially going from sea level and rising in elevation, did you ever have to go from striding to shuffling, taking shorter steps or shorter strides?
Now, I don't think I read about it. I don't think I've possibly been high enough to be affected by the altitude yet. The highest I've ever been is 12,000 feet, and that was the highest mountain in Spain. And I cheated a bit. I didn't start from ground level on that one, but I've got a lot of stamina, and I've normally been able to walk at a good pace. So when I read about the small steps, I thought, yes, I can understand that, but I haven't yet seriously had to do that. But I can imagine a time will come in the Spirit where, yes, I've seen people do it on mountains, especially as they get higher up, looking at your picture on the screen, you know, when you get past base camp and so on, then, you know, you really do that. And ascent becomes much slower, and very often just down to deliberately putting one foot in front of another and you know, willpower. I am going to get up to the next camp, but that's not a significant part of my experience yet. But I've taken it on board as something to look out for.
Well, I hear that at base camp, that's where all the good stories are. So
All right.
I think I'll crack out some coffee and all the stories around the fire at base camp. That must be something.
Yeah.
And so coaching calls. I'm learning this, so help me here if I need some help here. Sure. It really helps spur you on, direct you, give you ideas. And then on engagement calls for you, John and Andrew, it's really helping everyone to share their process. The application of like baby steps. And then we know that, you know, we're not alone in some things. It all depends on our location. Mm-hmm.
I've really enjoyed these conference calls. I think I've done 3 or 4 now, and you know, they are challenging. You know, they stretch you out. This one particularly appealed to me, of course. You know, I could relate very, very closely to the whole idea of going up higher, and I just love being up higher. You know, but my next call would be with Christine a week on Saturday, so I'll do a really good checkup then and see, you know, how I'm doing and where I need to progress to next.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so it's about 4:25. Does anybody else have anything to share before I wrap up here?
No, I think it's been a great learning experience for me. This is my first call, so you know, I'm enjoying it. At least I figured out how everything works.
Yes.
This has been great. So it's my first coaching call too. So I'm learning. I got my bag ready and my gear, and I'm like, it's very clear now. Like after about 5 years, for now, when I'm starting something new, I get it. Oh, it's like, okay, now I'm starting to climb. It's so much more clearer. And I know that the next thing is like, okay, now I'm going to be starting a climb. And it's really life-giving and has helped me tremendously to have clarity. And a lot of times, so something that I've learned in training, I call it pencil plans. And we've spent a year in my household making pencil plans. Like we'll make a plan, then erase it, and then we'll make another plan. But what that does is it really starts getting you to see possibilities. Oh, we could do this, we could do that. And there's so much life in that. And so with that, I'll just pray, and I'm going to bless you all in prayer. So Father, I just thank you right now for Foundations 1 and 2 and where we are in our climbs, in our preparations. Father, I just thank you for John and Andrew. I thank you that we will have eyes to see, Sharon and I and everyone else Way, who was on the call, and everyone else who's joining us. We would have eyes to see and ears to hear the windows of where you're whispering to us and encouraging us along the way, along the trail to ascend, Father. And I just thank you, Lord, that we would make love our great aim, that as we climb, that love would be the very center and heartbeat of why we're here and why we're choosing to climb. Father, I just thank you that I thank you for the giftings that are present, Lord, but I thank you that love is greater than our giftings. Train us in our giftings so that we may learn how to love with them. Father, as we climb, I pray that we wouldn't search out great matters, but we will remain rested in you. Father, and I just thank you that as we climb, we would be sensitive to areas of weakness, areas of wounding that we do have or have had, and that you would cover them with your wing and your healing love, because we want to climb with you, Father, to know you in your sufferings, but also to know you in your resurrection and the power that is in the earth. And Father, I just thank you as we go out from this place, Lord, that you would begin to step in on us, begin to step in and mentor us from this call in the direction or write the little pencil plan that we need to go, and that we would have a quick obedience in it. In Jesus' name, I pray this now. Bless you all.
Amen.
Amen.
Lovely to talk to you.
Good luck with your
Thanks.
girls, Andrew.
Okay. Speak to you all again sometime.
Yes. See
Yes.
ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. All right.
Hey, Sharon.
Yes. Oh, hit the record button
Oh,
and put it on pause.
that's right.